When Regina Hartwell meets Kim LeBlanc at a bar one night, she is convinced the beautiful college freshman is her soulmate. The two embark on a passionate love affair, and while Regina just seems to fall deeper in love, Kim's not so sure that Regina is the one. And when sexy personal trainer Justin Thomas catches Kim's eye, Regina will do anything to keep Kim by her side. And so will Justin. Hello and welcome to The Dark Side of Love. I'm your host, Bianca Sloan, author of suspense novels about the dark side of love. And this week I'm putting a spotlight on the case I'm calling Addicted to Love. Regina Stephanie Hartwell was born on February the 6th, 1970, the only child of Mark, an airplane mechanic, and Antoinette, also known as Tony. The Hartwell family lived in the Houston suburb of Pasadena, Texas, the so-called strawberry capital of the world, and filming location of the movie Urban Cowboy, starring John Travolta and Deborah Winger. The Hartwells were far from a happy little trio. As noted in the book Wasted by Susie Spencer, Mark was largely disconnected from the family, while Tony was known to be at best strict with little Regina and cruel at her worst. Regina wasn't allowed to wear pants or shorts or play outside without shoes, and Tony often grounded Regina for her obsessive picking at mosquito bites. If Regina asked for a piece of watermelon, Tony would make her eat the entire melon. One of Tony's lasting gifts to her daughter was to stub out her ever-present cigarettes on the little girl's back, until, as Wasted observed, quote, Regina's fair-skinned back became dotted with scars. Despite the extreme cruelty, Regina still worshipped her mother, desperately hoping Tony would love her even a little. Sadly, things became even more complicated when Regina was 7, and her 32-year-old mother was diagnosed with MS, or multiple sclerosis. She was given a life expectancy of no more than 43. However, Tony's life expectancy got really cut short when she died in a freak airplane accident just 5 years later at the age of 37. So Tony owned a cleaning business where she cleaned planes. And while at work one day out at the airport, she was accidentally crushed between a hangar door and a personnel door, killed instantly. So Tony's father and Regina's dad, Mark, he sued and eventually received a $2 million settlement. $400,000 of that was placed in a trust for Regina until she came of age. Unfortunately, Mark was ill-equipped to handle the emotional needs of his daughter, and when she was 16, he bought her a Porsche for her birthday before announcing that he was getting married, moving out, and leaving her with the house and the car. Now, granted, this sounds like a John Hughes movie, oh, we're going to have so much fun. We've got a house, we've got a car. But it's a disaster, of course, because Regina, she's 16, and she basically is left to the wolves. She's got to raise herself for the next 2 years. So you've got, for all intents and purposes, an orphan who is desperate to be loved and has come into a lot of money. This is not a recipe for disaster at all, is it? No. So Regina has no real friends and no adults to guide her, no positive role models, and as a result, she starts looking for love in all the wrong places. Shocker. Regina turns her house into party central for all the cool kids who are just there for the booze and the food. She has sex with boys, mostly for the companionship because really, she liked girls. Regina's friend and neighbor Jeremy Barnes said in Snap Killer Couples, quote, she was so vulnerable and so kind, and she really genuinely gave from her heart. Going on to say that Regina tried to buy every person in high school. That was her only way of truly knowing that she would have people around. She couldn't physically be alone. She was searching so hard for that love. Regina graduated from Pasadena High School in 1988 and hightailed it to Austin, where she immersed herself in the city's thriving LGBTQ community. With her girly dresses and long dark hair, as described in Wasted, the, quote, confident, cocky, charismatic Regina stands out, and she quickly amasses a genuine friend group. As Jeremy Barnes told Snapped Killer Couples, Regina has a spark plug of a personality, noting, quote, she didn't have to ask people to be around her. They just flocked to her. So this is a total 180 from high school. And one of the things that Regina and her group of friends love to do is go clubbing. And one of her favorite spots is the infamous Club 404. As the Austin Chronicle noted, in the early 90s, quote, Club 404 was Austin's go-to after-hours bar, an ostensibly gay bar that catered to absolutely everyone once the other bars closed up shop at 2 a.m. And one of the girls hanging out at Club 404 on July 4th, 1994, long after her bedtime, is 18-year-old Kim LeBlanc. Born Kimberly Alex Derrick on May 16, 1976 in Houston, Kim was described in Wasted as a tow-headed baby with big brown eyes and a smile that could light up the skies. Kim, like Regina, is an only child. A little over a year after she was born, Kim's mother, Mary Catherine, also known as Kathy, marries a man by the name of Kenneth LeBlanc, a man who is 10 years older than her. The young family moved out to Dripping Springs, about a half-hour west of Austin. While on the surface, Kenneth seemed to bring stability to Kim and Kathy's lives, playing the doting husband and devoted stepfather. Truth is, he was biding his time until Kim turned 13, so he could start molesting her. He bought Kim's silence with, among other things, guilt about what would happen to her and her mother if she told, and a flashy Jeep Sahara. A new car, of course, couldn't mask Kim's pain, and as is common with victims of sexual abuse, Kim went looking for love in the form of inappropriate sexual encounters with boys closer to her own age. She also sank into drinking and drugs, all as a way of trying to forget what her stepfather had done to her. By the time Kim hit high school, she was a pretty blonde cheerleader for the Lake Travis Cavaliers at Lake Travis High School. Described in Wasted as having a, quote, megawatt personality, the popular outgoing Kim played the role of the quintessential all-American girl, notching a spot in the National Honor Society, building sets for the school play, and joining the Spanish Club. As former classmate Tracy Pandia noted to Snapped Killer Couples about Kim, quote, she was not somebody who hid in the corner of the room. She made sure everybody knew she was there. However, by Kim's senior year, she was swirling down the drain. Her drug use increased from weekends to almost daily, and after a dispute on the cheerleading squad where another girl was chosen as captain over her, Kim quit the team, hacked off her long blonde hair to a nub, and dyed it jet black. As noted in Snapped Killer Couples, Kim then became a straight-up mean girl. She's doing things like TPing houses, spray painting cars, bumping into girls in the hallway accidentally on purpose. But despite Kim's best efforts to burn it all to the ground, in the spring of 1994, she graduated 4th in her class and was accepted to the University of Texas at Austin, one of the top universities in the country, boasting such alums as Farrah Fawcett, Matthew McConaughey, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. 24-year-old Regina is instantly smitten with 18-year-old Kim, who has just completed freshman orientation at UT. Though smitten might be underplaying it just a little, because as attorney Joe James Sawyer astutely noted in Snapped Killer Couples, Regina was, quote, blinded, dazzled, bewitched by her. In the book Wasted, it was described that Kim was exactly what Regina liked, as she was, quote, outgoing, tiny, pretty, well-toned, and brunette. Just Regina Hartwell's type. Regina's infatuation with Kim knew no bounds, with Wasted noting that Regina would tell her friends, quote, I would do anything for her. I love her so much. She is so beautiful. Regina also felt an admiration of sorts for the girl because Kim came from a good family, a stable family, not like the one she came from. Kim would also be attending one of the best colleges in the country, and Kim had a mother who loved her. So in other words, Kim had everything that Regina didn't have and desperately wanted. So to this point in 18-year-old Kim's life, she had always identified as straight. However, when the older Regina starts to woo Kim by falling into her old habits of trying to buy love by handing the girl her debit card and treating Kim and her friends to an all-expenses-paid party cruise to the Bahamas, Kim finds the siren song hard to ignore, and eventually she begins to fall for Regina, and the two start sleeping together. Attorney Joe James Sawyer told Snap Killer Couples, quote, "It was an intensely sexual relationship." Kim and Regina quickly become inseparable, with Regina doing pretty much everything she could to keep Kim by her side, including giving her carte blanche access to her bank accounts, buying her thousands of dollars in clothes, and even opening up a $5,000 mutual fund in Kim's name. Anything Kim wanted, and anything Regina wanted her to have, Kim got, no questions asked. Austin Police Detective John Hunt said in Snap Killer Couples, quote, "Regina wanted to provide for her. She was just her kept woman. Anything to keep Kim happy and keep Kim with her, Regina did." Regina's friends try to warn her that Kim is only in it for the coins, but Regina is not trying to hear that noise. For his part, Regina's friend Jeremy Barnes, his gaydar is definitely dormant when it comes to Kim, telling Snap Killer Couples, quote, "I never really thought that Kim was a full-out lesbian. It's nice for Kim to be wined and dined and to be spoiled." He went on to say that Regina had convinced herself that she had somebody who would never leave her, somebody she could take care of. Regina keeps her grip on Kim by paying Kim's rent, buying her a Jeep, so she got another new Jeep, and a pager, which in the 90s it was a BFD to have a pager, although Regina's only doing it to keep tabs on Kim. She also supplies Kim with the drug ecstasy, which according to Wasted apparently served to increase Kim's ardor for Regina. So now I wonder if she was giving it to her. Kim's mom, Kathy, also really liked her daughter's girlfriend, letting Regina call her mom, which I'm sure sent Regina into a puddle of goo since she was so desperate to have a mother's love. So this relationship, if you could call it that, was mutually beneficial for both Kim and Regina. However, it is starting to dawn on Kim that she has bitten off more than she can chew, and that indeed, she is no more of a lesbian than a paperclip. Things come to a head during a trip to New York that, of course, Regina pays for, where Kim fesses up, "I'm just not gay, so I'm out." Joe James Sawyer, the attorney, he mused to Snap Killer Couples, quote, "Kim couldn't long-term accept the fact that she was sexually involved with another woman. Greed kept her there in part. She wanted the money, she wanted the travel, but yeah, I think she had an inner conflict about it." Kim takes a definitive step towards weaning herself off of Regina's generosity by going out and getting a job at a gym as a receptionist. And it's around that time that she has an awakening of sorts, realizing it's been a while since she's been with a man and she would really like one to bang her gong. And so she decides, you know what, next guy that comes through that door, I'm making my move. And fate walks through the door in the form of a personal trainer named Justin Thomas. Described in Wasted as 6'4" with hazel green eyes, light brown hair, a pro football player physique, and a sweet smile, California native Justin Heath Thomas is not someone you can take your eyes off of. Even Regina's friend Jeremy Barnes was not immune, telling Snap Killer Couples, quote, "I'm a gay man, and Justin was a pretty good-looking guy." Justin had a tumultuous upbringing. This is a theme here with all the players in this. And some of what happened in his background was that his mother had attempted suicide multiple times. He had a violent stepfather, and Justin himself had a raging dependency on alcohol and drugs that included pot, cocaine, meth, and acid. He made his way to Texas during high school, eventually cleaning up his act enough to become a star football player with Division I schools panting after him and girls hanging all over him. However, Justin's old demons just proved to be too powerful, and instead of heading to college and then the NFL, Justin decided, I'm going to be an almighty drug lord, as one does. So while Justin made a lot of money dealing, he also spent a lot of that money. And after attempting to clean up his act via a failed marriage and a stint in the army, where he got kicked out for failing his drug test, Justin thought he would give school and football another try. So he headed to Austin, where his father lived, to do just that. But once again, the lure of fast money from drugs got the better of him. Though to keep up appearances, he became a trainer at the same gym where an in-heat Kim was working. Just like when Regina laid eyes on Kim, she was also Justin's type, even sharing a resemblance of sorts with his ex-wife. So as they say, if you want something, put your mind to it. And Kim wanted Justin, and she worked on him until she got that coveted date with him. So for their first date, instead of, dinner and a movie, Justin takes Kim on a drug run. And then they go back to her place, and they get high on coke, on meth, and eventually each other, before Kim gets her wish and gets Justin to put his boots under her bed. They have sex everywhere. Hallway, the bedroom, the bathroom. Who says romance is dead? At some point, Kim starts flapping her lips to Justin about Regina and her big fat bank account. So apparently Regina was still paying the bills and Kim was all too happy to let her. And so while Justin was okay with Kim and Regina staying friends, Regina felt no such generosity. However, as the saying goes, you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And Regina, although she is seething with jealousy, realized that in order to keep close to Kim, she needed to bring Justin into the fold. Part of that included suggesting to Justin that they join forces to build a drug empire of sorts in Austin. Regina's got a lot of contacts. Justin is good at sales, so it seems like it's going to be a win-win. As Travis County District Attorney Greg Cox said in Snapped Killer Couples, quote, "She allowed Justin to enter the world so she could keep a connection with Kim going." Wasted author Susie Spencer bluntly told the program, quote, "It was a fake friendship all around." Meanwhile, the person who's really getting the best end of the stick, so to speak, is Miss Kim. She is hanging out with Regina all day, getting high, getting her bills paid, and she's letting Justin tap it every night. At some point, Regina convinces Kim to take a trip to Cancun together, likely to try and woo her back and make her forget all about Justin. But it was predictably a disaster. They fought pretty much from the time they touched down in Mexico, and while yes, Kim is totally addicted to Justin, there's more to it than that. Because remember, Kim is not gay, and there's no changing that. But Regina just cannot accept that reality. Jeremy Barnes told Snap Killer Couples, quote, "They were just toxic to each other at that point. Regina just didn't want to take no for an answer." So Kim actually leaves Regina in Cancun and heads straight to Justin once she's back in Austin. Regina calls Kim when she's back in town, and when she realizes that Kim is cuddling up with Justin, she's furious. She loses it. And at this point, Regina determines that the issue isn't Kim's sexual orientation, it's Justin. June 29th, 1995, 9:38 p.m. A call comes into the fire department in Bastrop, Texas, located about 30 miles southeast of Austin. The call is to report a grass fire in a wide open patch of farmland near Highway 71. The first thought was it might have been a stolen car that had been set on fire, which was apparently a common occurrence in this particular field. Firefighters head to the scene, thoroughly expecting a run-of-the-mill car fire, and work quickly to contain the blaze of what they've come to realize is a Jeep. However, something in the back seat catches the eye of one of the firefighters. It's bones and a skull. The firefighter is looking at a corpse. He immediately calls the sheriff's department to report that they have a crime scene. The Jeep is a charred, twisted mess of glass, metal, and rubber, making it hard to get much in the way of identifying information. The only thing investigators on the scene could discern about the body is that it was a female. Miraculously, Despite the extreme damage to the Jeep, the vehicle identification number, or VIN, for the Jeep is perfectly intact, and authorities call it in. They discover that the car is registered to Regina. They call the number that they have on file for the car, for the Jeep, and leave a message on the answering machine asking for her to call them back. Meanwhile, Regina's neighbor Jeremy, who has keys to her apartment, lets himself in to retrieve a cooking pot, that he had loaned to her because he wanted to make himself some spaghetti. He notices that the place is a mess, but Regina's kind of a mess, so he doesn't think too much about it. There's beer bottles, empty Marlboro cartons, dishes stacked in the kitchen sink, the bathroom's filthy. What he thought were used tampons were scattered around the floor because apparently her dog Spirit was prone to getting in the trash and dragging them out, so that's what Jeremy figured had happened this time. There's also a dark stain on the carpet that he thought might have been dog dew. Regina had told Jeremy a few days prior to clean her apartment by Monday, something that he did on occasion for extra cash. So he feeds the dog, gives her some water, lets himself out, determining he's going to come back by Monday. Well, Jeremy just can't wait that long because, again, the place is a sty. So he goes back the very next day to just go ahead and clean up Regina's apartment. As he starts to look closer, he notices blood in the bathroom, tiny spatters of it by the toilet, in the shower, on the wall. Again, this doesn't really faze him, though, because Regina sometimes has nosebleeds and she passes out. She also was apparently allergic to Kleenex, with Wasted noting that, quote, Jeremy would not have been surprised if Regina had just picked her nose and flicked her bloody mucus on the walls. Well, I could have gone my whole life without hearing that. Jeremy, good friend that he is, he dutifully cleans up the apartment, scrubbing and scraping away the droplets of blood that he continues seeing throughout. But again, doesn't think anything of it because, again, Regina's a slob, so none of this phases him whatsoever. Never be that person. Never be that person. Jeremy feeds the dog again, gives it some water again, and leaves. However, over the next few days, there is still no sign of Regina. Every time Jeremy stops by, it is clear that she's not been home. Finally, he takes a look at her caller ID and sees that there are 2 missed calls from the Bastrop County Sheriff's Department. The first thing that flashes through Jeremy's mind is relief, because he thinks that Regina has been arrested and she needs to be bailed out. And he calls them back, and he jokes even about wanting to bail his friend out of jail. As reported in Wasted, investigator Don Nelson gets on the line and tells Jeremy he's got a burned out Jeep, a female body, and no way to identify it. When Jeremy informs him that he's actually in Regina's apartment, Nelson instructs him, don't touch anything, take the dog, and get out. Well, Jeremy has to fess up that, oops, my bad, I already cleaned up the crime scene, but he complies and scoops up the dog's Spirit, bolts from the apartment. And even though there isn't any confirmation that the body found in the Jeep is Regina, Jeremy knows deep down it has to be. Dental records ultimately provide the positive match that indeed the body found in the back seat of the Jeep is Regina. Regina Hartwell was 25 years old. Travis County DA Greg Cox told Snap Killer Couples, quote, "You could not visibly recognize who this was, but the interior of the body was well preserved enough that the medical examiner was able to determine that it was a homicide and that the cause of death was a stabbing wound. A knife and a gas can were found near the Jeep, and the wound, which was in the neck, pretty much matches the size and shape of the knife found at the scene." Investigators searched Regina's apartment, and because Jeremy had done such a great job of cleaning up, to the naked eye, there doesn't seem to be much blood evidence. However, after they spray the apartment with luminol, they can see that there is blood everywhere, particularly by the recliner in the living room. Jeremy is remorseful, of course, and as Detective John Hunt of the Austin Police Department commented in Snap Killer Couples, it was obvious how distraught Jeremy was, saying, quote, "He was really concerned and had no idea what he was doing." At one point, while Regina was still missing, investigators actually talked to Kim and questioned her, with DA Greg Cox noting to Snapped Killer Couples, quote, Kim was a complete mess. She was emotionally sort of a wreck. So when Kim is talking to cops about Regina, she mentions Regina's raging drug habit and her deep pockets. Maybe something has gone wrong with a drug deal. Maybe, it's something about her money. But Regina's friends say that Regina's dealers were pretty harmless, run-of-the-mill dope dealers. However, there is one that they may want to take a closer look at. Justin. By now, Kim has vanished, and shocker, so is Justin. So now, police are on the hunt. They get a hold of Kim's pager number, the one that Regina bought her, and they page Kim and learn that she is at Justin's family home. At first, Justin's family tries to cover for her and claims she's not there, but finally she shows up. She's a completely strung out, hot-ass mess. And then Justin shows up and he looks even worse. So Kim had given him some kind of weird mohawk-like haircut, and he's also got a massive cut on the webbing of his hand between his thumb and his forefinger. Now, he says he cut it jumping a fence, but nobody believes that. It sounds fakakta. Cops bring them both in, and while Justin's mouth is sealed shut, Kim is singing, and she spills all the tea on exactly what happened to Regina. So after Regina and Kim come home from the botched Cancun trip, Regina sets Justin in her sights, putting him on notice that she is eliminating him as competition, telling him, quote, I can put you in prison. Regina had a connection in the Austin Police Department, and she has vowed to turn Justin in for being a dealer. Justin is livid over being threatened, and according to Wasted, he vows, quote, I ain't letting nobody send me to prison, especially not some coke-snorting lesbian biatch. He seems nice. Kim claims that she didn't take any of what Justin or Regina said seriously, but indeed, Justin is gathering supplies and formulating a plan. So Regina was at home, high, drifting in and out of consciousness on her couch, when she opens her eyes and sees Justin standing in front of her, having gotten in through a broken window. She calmly says, What up, Jay? Justin showed the knife that he had procured for the mission and lunged at her, driving the knife so deep in her neck it punctured her lung, causing Regina to suffocate in her own blood. It took all of less than 20 seconds. Justin dumped her body into the bathroom and turned on the shower, allowing the blood to drain from her body before dragging her to the recliner and wrapping her in a maroon blanket and hauling her out to her Jeep, throwing her in the back like a sack of potatoes. He later showed up at Kim's place and announced, I stabbed her. Kim claims that she was shocked, but she obeyed Justin when he demanded that she help him clean up the wound in his hand, get rid of the bloody clothes, and together, they drove to a gas station. And because Kim is nothing if not practical, she still got Regina's ATM card and uses that to put $12 worth of gas into a gas can that Justin had swiped from his father's carport before they head out to Bastrop to torch the Jeep and Regina's body. Afterwards, they stop at an ATM to withdraw $200 more of Regina's money before hitting up a grocery store for a box of black hair dye. They checked into a $45 a night motel, and Kim shaved off Justin's hair and dyed it black. The cleaning lady would later say that the room was an unholy mess of bloody towels and hair dye. The plan was to flee to California, but first they took refuge at Justin's family home. Justin's hand was pretty infected by this point, but Kim just kept withdrawing money from Regina's account and buying them drugs to ease the pain. Kim, it seemed, was determined to stand by her man no matter the literal and figurative cost. Austin PD Detective John Hunt said in Snapped Killer Couples, quote, Kim had become more and more convinced in her own mind that she did need and want Justin. She didn't want Justin put in jail. The gravy train comes to an end when Kim and Justin are arrested and charged with murder. Because Kim had asked for a lawyer during her initial interrogation but didn't get one, she is given immunity in exchange for testifying against Justin. Justin's trial began in 1996, and he was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder. And in a crazy twist, it turns out that Justin was wanted for a murder back in California, And so he was extradited back there in 2000 and charged with and found guilty of first-degree murder for that crime. He was eventually sentenced to death in March of 2008 and is currently on death row. Much the way she did when she was with Regina, Kim is living under a lucky sign because all of the charges were dropped against her in relation to Regina's murder. Attorney Joe James Sawyer bluntly told Snap Killer Couples about the woman in the middle of this mess, quote, "She never paid any price at all for what she did. None." Kim later changed her name and vaporized. As for Jeremy Barnes, neighbor and good friend, he still remembers Regina and vows to never let her memory fade, telling Snap Killer Couples, quote, "I want everyone to know that she's never been forgotten about." Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Dark Side of Love. I am your host, Bianca Sloan, and show your love for The Dark Side of Love by visiting thedarksideoflove.com for show notes and transcripts. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to be notified about new episodes, and you can also find a link to my Patreon page where you can access bonus material and other fun stuff. Learn more about my suspense novels about the dark side of love by visiting biancasloan.com. Thanks for hanging out with me, and join me next time for another tale of love gone wrong. I'll see you on the dark side.